Freilichen Purim, this is Gemar Yevamos, Daf Yud Aleph, and today's shir, the shir for Purim here in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, has been generously sponsored as a Schus Brach and Yeshua for Zalman Usher Ben Vela. The learning of the entire Chabura on such an auspicious day, a day as which we mentioned yesterday, the Zohar teaches us, Kol HaPoishid Yanaisin La Kadosh Baruch Hu should shower Zalman Usher Ben Vela and his entire Mishpacha with Bracha and Yeshua, as well as today's Daf has been generously sponsored by close friend of the Daf, L'Schos Hatzlachas Moshe Ben Vela and his entire family, and as well the learning of the entire Chabura. Again, today, what an incredible day to learn Torah, every word of Torah. The Chassam Sofer says today, it makes one a Benam Olam Haba, should bring a tremendous Eschos Yeshua for both of these incredible families. As well as the learning Shvias Chashidach V'Sochaim Dvar Shamil Ben Levi Zahava Ovik Ben Teli and Shema Ben Chayo. They shall find the Shidduch Bekarim Hamish. As well as Chus for Shlomo Shem Yos Ben Reveda Shmuel Ben Tila Naftali Zvi Mechlester Nachman Nechama Bas Riva Basheva Fego Bas Shira Chana Beseich Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. So we're holding on the bottom of Yud Amid Beis, about 10 lines to the bottom, midst of a deep discussion between Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, how exactly we're supposed to deal with this case of Achilis the Yevimtai Vikitsha Umei. So to remind yourself what's going on, let's go back to the case which we spoke about yesterday. Understand the machlokes of Yochanan and Rish Lakish, as today's daf will continue on the same theme. So those who are looking at their screen, you'll see in front of you the case of Achilitz the Yevimtai. That one goes and instead of, he has an option to do Chalitza to Yavam, what does he do? He does Chalitza. So now we have a machlokes, Rish Lakish and Rav Yochanan, exactly what happens next. Says the Gemara, says Rish Lakish, that you're pater from Yibam to the other brother. Why? Because you're an Arava. Says Rav Yochanan, you're Chayiv, because you're not an Arava, they're just a Chayiv Lavin. The lav of Shuv Lo Yivna, we described yesterday how the fundamental, the crux of this machlokes, Rish Lakish and Rav Yochanan, is whether we view that when Rachel does Chalitza with Ruvain, whether we view that in a vacuum, that they are viewed as their own entity, or whether we view that Rachel and Reuven are acting on the behest of the entire brothers. But basically what comes out is that according to Rish Lakish, she remains an Arava to the other brothers. According to Rav Yochanan, she is not an Arava. And therefore, when Ruvain does Chalitza, and then after doing Chalitza, what does he do? He goes and he marries that woman, which of course we know is not allowed. Once you do Chalitza, you sever it. But then that's what Ruvain did. He did the Aveira, and then Ruvain dies. What happens now? So that is where we see this transposition of the Machlokes, Rish Lakish and Rav Yochanan. Rish Lakish teaching us that Ein Lo Yalav Klum, because it's Chayve increases, whereas according to Rav Yochanan, it's Chayve Lavim. And now this is really going to be, as the Gemara now is going to play out, how we deal with this whole story. So says the Gemara, Eisvei Rav Yochanan, the Rish Lakish, Rav Yochanan asked Rish Lakish the following question. Again, we're 10 lines from the bottom of Yud Amid Beis. Hachiles the Yevimtai v'chazer v'kitsha umei, the case that's under discussion that you did Chalitza, then you remarry that woman, then that person dies. Sricha Chalitza min ha'achin, says the Braisa, you need to do Chalitza. The brothers don't get off scot-free. They're still involved in this story. They have to do Chalitza. So says Rav Yochanan to Rish Lakish, V'shlama l'didi, according to myself, Rav Yochanan, Damina chayve lavin inu. I hold that what are the brothers? The brothers are alive to this woman. Now it makes a lot of sense they need chalitza. Because any time that there's just a lav, the regular lav of Ishezach, the halacha is that there's some level of zika, there's some level of connection between the brother and this woman. Therefore you have to chalitza. But ask Rav Yochanan, chalitza. According to you, why do you need chalitza? In this case, there is kares, and if there is kares, it should be like a case of erva, in which you're not allowed to do chalitza, you're not allowed to do yibum. Responds Rish Lakish l'taimech, according to you, Rav Yochanan name a seifa. What did the seifa of that brisa say? So let's hone in. The Reisha was a kasha on Rish Lakish. The seifa is going to be a kasha on Rav Yochanan, and then the Gemara is going to have to deal with how each one answers up the other half of the brisa. Says the Gemara, l'taimech ema seifa amar echem and achem the kitchen. One of the brothers got up. If one of the brothers, not the brother that did chalitza, one of the other brothers married her, ein la alav klum, there is nothing. She does not need a get from that man. That kedushin is nothing. If the other brother goes after brother A does chalitza, the brother marries her, that kedushin is nothing. That therefore she could go and marry elsewhere without any issue at all. Says the Gemara, says Reish Lakish back to Rabbi Yochanan, according to you, Rabbi Yochanan, that there's just the lav of Shavla Yivneh. Amayin la klum, why is there nothing? The Kedushin should work, and if the Kedushin is work, she should need to get at some level. Omar Rav Sheshes answers, Rav Sheshes, Seifa Asyan the Rav Akiva, the Omar, which of course is at the fundamental idea. What's going on over here is there's different levels. We have arayas which are chayve kares, like we saw from the beginning of the Masechta, and then we have a case of a chayve lavim that is an issa d'oraisa, a lav, a loisa saying you're not allowed to do this, you get malchus, but it's a lav, it's not krisos. Says the Gemara, we thought in the Havamina that when it's a lav, if you do kedushin to someone that you have a lav to, it's ulcer. But we thought the kedushin is chal, the kedushin works, it's effective. In order to sever that marriage, you have to do get or something. Says the Gemara, according to Rabbi Kiva, no. Ein kedusha taifsin machayve lavin. Ask the Gemara in the last line of Yudam Abayz, listening to Rabbi Kiva in law love klum. So why did the Brisa not say that according to Rabbi Kiva it's nothing? If the whole seif of the chiddush of the seif is holding in just on the sheet of Rabbi Kiva, and that's why it doesn't work, why doesn't it say such? Says the Gemara, kasha, that is indeed shver, and the Gemara leaves it at that, and that's what we're answering. We're answering that. It's according to Rabbi Kiva, but we don't have another way of dealing with the Braisa. That is answer number one, how to reconcile the Braisa. Rav Ashi comes along with the second answer, then we're going to have Ravina. So three different ways how we're going to deal with this Braisa in a way that Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish could both coexist and learn this Braisa without any issue. So answer number one was we're going with the opinion of Rabbi Kiva that Kedushin does not work on Chayvei Lavin. Answer number two on the top of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, Rav Ashi Savala Rav Lakish. Rav Ashi holds like Reish Lakish, umetaritz la Rav Shimon. Ravina savar like Rav Yochanan umetaritz k'Rabbanan. So two different ways of learning the Braisa, Rav Ashi and Ravina. Rav Ashi says like Reish Lakish, Ravina says like Rav Yochanan, and like we mentioned, each one, Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan, had a different part of the Braisa that was shver. One had an issue with the Reisha, the other had an issue with the Seifa. So Rav Ashi says like Reish Lakish, and he answers like Rav Shimon. Ravina says like Rav Yochanan, answers like Rabbanan. Now, who is Reish Lakish? Who is Rav Shimon? And who are the Rabbanan? And the Gemara doesn't explain. So now the Gemara explains. Says the Gemara 3 lines down on Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, Rav Ashi savar like Reish Lakish, umetaritz like Rav Shimon. Rav Ashi learns like Reish Lakish. And how does he answer up the Reisha of the Braisa? Like Rav Shimon. There is a Braisa that says, this is the original Braisa. This is the case. The brother does Chalitza. After Chalitza, he goes and marries that woman Be'eser. Says the Braisa, Sri Chalitza Mina Achim, you need Chalitza from the brothers. And this, of course, is difficult according to Reish Lakish. Why would you need chalitza? Says the Gemara, man achim. What does it mean, mina brothers? Achin hayiloidim, the new brother. A brother that is born after the original chalitza is effected. When the first person does chalitza and then a brother is born, so that brother is born into a situation where they already did chalitza. Then when he goes and remarries that woman, that brother is going to have to go and do chalitza if the Yavam falls to him. Kiman, who does this go like? Ki Rav Shimon. This goes according to the opinion of Rav Shimon. This is a Rav Shimon, and which we had already in Daf Yomi base. This is Rav Shimon that says that if the child is born afterwards, then there's going to be the zika that you're going to have to take care of by doing chalitza. Kiman ki Rav Shimon. That is answer number one. But how do we deal with the seifa according to Reish Lakish? If one of the other brothers who had been born beforehand, hanoiladim, let's get the dicta clear. There's the yiloidim, those who will be born, and hanoiladim, those that were born. So the first part is going with the hayiloidim, the new brother. The second part is going with the hanoiladim, the original brother, that if he goes v'kitsha in of klum, there is nothing. Why? Keman Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish, the halacha is there's still that kares. According to Reish Lakish, the brothers are forbidden under the penalty of kares, and therefore if they go and marry her, it doesn't do anything. You can't go and marry someone in which you're usher via kares to that person. That is Rav Ashi's answer, and we'll see this all played out with Av Chaim's chart in a moment. Ravina Savlak Rav Yochanan Madaris Aliv Derabanan. How does Ravina learn? If someone does chalitza v'chaz for kitchen goes marries that person, it's chalitza v'nacham, you have to do chalitza. Man achin. So how does Ravina explain? Achin hanoi ladin. Again, the same diktuk, the brothers who are already born. Kiman ki Rav Yochanan. This goes according to Rav Yochanan. It says that there's an isra say. Amanechad hayiloidim. One of the new brothers gets up. V'kitcha ilo love klon keman ki Rabbanan. This goes according to Rabbanan. Who are the Rabbanan? They argue on Rav Shimon. And these are the Rabbanan that they hold that the reason that the Kedushin does not work is because since they were born afterwards, there is going to be a new karis on them, and therefore the Kedushin will not be able to take effect. Before we go into the new case, this is really playing out, we just said, the two parts of the Braisa, Menachem and Achim, V'kitcha in lo klum, Achilitzi Avimtos, Rav Sheshes, so they're both like Rav Yochanan. And the second Braisa is Rav Akiva. Rav Ashi says they're both like Reish Lakish. The first Braisa is going to Achin Hayiloidim, the new brothers. Second Braisa, Achin Hanoiladim, the old brothers. Ravina, however, on the other hand, goes with Rav Yochanan. How does Ravina deal with the two parts of the Bryce? I call them Marish and a Seif. It's really two different Bryces. How does Ravina deal with it? The first Bryce is Acha Hanoiladim, and the second Bryce is Acha Hayiloidim, and that is the different ways of dealing with this contradiction in Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Itmar says the Gemara, a new case. Habal Yevama, someone who goes and sleeps with the Yevama, effectively performing Yibum, marrying the woman. Again, a woman's husband dies, her brother goes and does Yibum with the wife, and then another brother came al Sarasa and goes and sleeps with the Sarah. What's the problem here? The problem is you only get one chance. Either Yibum or Chalitza is done with the deceased wife or with the co-wife. You can't do both. So once one brother does Yibum with the first wife, the co-wife is off limits. But a different brother went and did Yibum with the co-wife. What do we do now? Says the Gemara, this is a machlokes. And this is really literal, a transposition of the previous machlokes of Real Shakish and Rav Yochanan. As the Gemara explains, Madamar Kikare says everyone can anticipate is like Reish Lakish. Madamar Basei is like Rav Yochanan. Says the Gemara. Now let's go into a bit of a different area. Let's focus now solely on the chsara, solely on the co-wife. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Yudah Marav, about 12 lines to the bottom of Yud Aleph, Amid Aleph. Saras Soita, this should sound familiar, we had this back in Daf Yomi, a woman an adulteress, a woman that goes and sleeps with another man while she is married, she is a Soita. She now is forbidden Asr Lebal v'Asr Lebayil. She's forbidden to the person that she slept with, the new man, and she's forbidden to original husband. So now the problem is she's forbidden to her husband. What happens if her husband dies? So she now falls to Yibum to her husband's brother. But do we say that because she's forbidden to her husband, therefore she has the level of an erva, and therefore there's no Yibum or Chalitza? Or do we say that there is? And whatever the halacha is going to be, what is the halacha with the tzara, with the co-wife of this woman that was Mizaneh, this woman that is a Saita? Says the Gemara, Saras Saita Asura. The Sarah, the co-wife of a Saita, is Asur to the Yavam. And there's no Yibam, there's no Chalitza, there's nothing. Why? Toma ksiv v'karayis, because it says Toma with regard to the Saita, and therefore it's the same din as an Arava. Just like an Arava is off limits, a Saita, Toma, is off limits. So says the Gemara, says Rav Yudah Marav, the Sarah of the Saita, the co-wife of the Saita, is for not just that it's forbidden, there's no Yibum, there's no Chalitza, there's nothing, just like the 15 cases in our Mishnah. Asks the Gemara, Masav Rav Chisda, Rav Shimon Aimer Biyasa Chalitza Me'achav Shal Rishon B'Teres Harasa. Says the Gemara, we have a Mishnah we'll get to in a few months on Beis Zayim and Beis. And the Mishnah says, what happens if a man goes overseas and he disappears, and the Bezdin Paskins that his wife is allowed to get remarried, and she goes and she gets remarried, and then lo and behold, one day her husband shows up, he's really indeed alive. So ostensibly this woman was a saita. She slept with another man while being married to the first person. Now, albeit she did it unwillingly, she did it because Bezdin told her to do it. But at the end of the day, that is the story. So really, what should happen right now? What should happen right now is that there is a din derabanan forbidding her back to her original husband. Really, there should be no issue with her going back to her original husband, but midirabanan, because we want her to make sure that she checks and double checks and triple checks before she gets remarried, midirabanan, we say she's not allowed to go back to her original husband. So says Amar Masar Rav Chisda Rav Shimon Aimer Biasa Oy Chalitza Samechav Shal Rishain Paiteris Arasa. Rav Shimon learned that this woman, if the husband dies after coming back from overseas, she has to do either Yibam or Chalitza with the brother. Then her co-wife is Pater. What's the kasha? The kasha is this woman at some levels a din of a saita, like we said. She slept with another man while being married. Again, true, she did it unwillingly. She was told to do it. But at the end of the day, she is a woman that's sleeping with a man with her husband that is alive. Well, now, when that husband dies, we would think she's a regular saita. What's a regular saita? We just said a moment ago. It's Pater from Yibam Chalitza. Toma. It's a Toma defilement just like an Erva. But we see clearly in the Brisa that's not true. That Biasa Chalitza, that if there's a Gibam or Chalitza, then the Tzara is Pater. Clearly that there's a requirement for Yibam or Chalitza. So asks Rav Chisda, we see not like Rav Yudah Marav, we see that a Saita still maintains some connection requiring a Yibam or Chalitza. What's your kasha? I was talking about a real saita, and you're asking me from a case of a woman that went and got remarried when her husband was overseas, in which we give her a din of a saita. That's all a din derabanan. So what's the kasha at all? Of course, there's a difference. Says the Gemara. Beautiful answer. Who's kairla? My kairla. What was your havamina? What were you thinking to equate the two? Says the Gemara. Kasavar called the tikkun rabbanan came to rice. The tikkun the havamina was. Whenever the rabbanan make it a din, they make the din at the same level as the daraisa, and therefore we thought to equate the two. Master Rav Ashi, now Rav Ashi gets involved and asks on Rav Yudah Merav. Let's say, sir, what happens in the case of a saita that she goes in, she's secluded with the man, and they say in seclusion for a long enough time to have a bia of a long enough time to be metameh, asura lebeisa, she's usher to her house, vasura leachol b'chuma, she can't eat chuma anymore. And what happens if her husband dies? Choylet says she has to do chalitza beloy misyabemes as we turn over Tameh Beis. She's not allowed to do yibam. But what do we see? We see you have to do chalitza. Why do you have to do chalitza? It's a regular case of a saita. It's a regular case that she went and she was secluded with this man. So what should happen? She should have a din of a saita. When her husband dies, she should be scot-free. There should be no yibam, no chalitza. She should be just like an erva. So why does this Brisa say clearly she has to do chalitza? Amr l'charav. Responds Rav in the top line of Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Aminucha na saita vate amrli saita. Saita Safik? What's your kasha? This is a Safik. We don't know for sure that they were together. We know that they were secluded for a certain amount of time. So that's the reason why there still is something there. You have to do chalitza. My case is Saita Vadai. Asks the Gemara, what's the reason? Because my taima, because by Saita Vadai it says Tuma, they are defiled one to another. Tuma, you're labeled just like an erva, so there's no yibam, no chalitza. Ask the Gemara, but a suffix nami toma ksivba, but a saita suffix as well. It says toma. We also call a woman who's a suffix. We're not sure if she was defiled. We also call her a tamea. We also call her toma, so she should be on the same level. Titania, how do we know we call her toma? Rabbi Yisben kiba misham Rav Lazar machzi grushas min anisuin. So when remarries his grushan is one very important halacha. We have to know that after one gets divorced from a woman, he's allowed to remarry her, but only before she marries someone else. If she goes and marries another man, that's it, it's finished, she can never go back to her first husband. But let's say someone does. If someone goes back and remarries the woman after she married someone else, if she remarried someone else to nisuin, then asura, she's not allowed to go back to the original husband, mina erisin, mutares. But if the second husband, she only did erisin, then she's allowed to go back to her first husband. Why? Misham shenemar acharei asheru tama'ah. It says after she had been defiled, honing in on the nisuin, honing in on the completion of the marriage. And this is the kasha, chazu v'chazu asura. No! Say the chachamim, whether there was erisin, whether there was nisuin again from this divorced woman to a new husband, she is asura, she is not allowed to go back to her original husband. And therefore, what do we do with the pasuk that says after she was utama, after she was defiled, seemingly honing in on the suin, on the completion of the marriage? Le rabbis. Saita shenistera. It comes to include a saita that was secluded. So what do we see? We see according to the Rabbanan, even though the saita that was secluded, it's a suffix, we don't know for sure. Still, what do we see? We see that the halacha is that she is called a tuma. If she's called tuma, then she should not have any din of yibam, any din of chalitza. It says the Gemara back, my nistra, what is nistra? Me nivel they had piyah. My karla nistra, why calling it secluded? Lishna mal yanakat. It's just a nice way of talking. We don't want to say that they were slept together, so we just say that they were defiled. Says the Gemara, 1 second. If you're going to tell me that this woman was a mizana and she mamish slept with this man, that we know the Torah says explicitly, Tama. Answers the Gemara, you're right, but we need another pasuk lamekam Allah bilav to say that there is a lav, and therefore you can't say that the case of Tama Safek, the case of Saita Safek says Tama Bayit. And that's the opinion of the Chachamim. Says the Gemara, great, now let's flip the coin. If you look 5 lines down in the Amid, we quote Rav Yossi ben Kippur. And Rav Yossi ben Kippur was differentiated between whether there was erisin or nesuin to the new husband. Says the Gemara, Rav Yossi ben Kippur, lav b'saita lesle. Rav Yossi ben Kippur doesn't hold there's a lav. He doesn't have this extra pasuk, so he does not hold that there's a lav. Afilu zanay nami, and even if she was mizana for sure, still there is no lav. Of course, it is forbidden, but there's no explicit lav. There's no malchus ma'itema havaya v'ishos kseva. It's only when there's avaya and ishus, that's when there's a lav. Over here, by the Saita Safek, there is no lav. That is Rav Yossi ben Kippur. Says the Gemara, once we're on the topic of a machzer grushasai, someone that remarries his divorcee in a forbidden case after she married someone else. Let's delve a bit deeper into this for the conclusion of today's shir. About 15 lines down, the first word on the line is ba'a. Ask Rav Yehuda from Rav Sheshes, ha machzer grushasai mishanises. Someone goes back and remarries his grusha after she gets married, umeis, and then he dies. So rasa mahu, what is the status of the co-wife? Is there yibum in this case? The marriage was be'isr. He wasn't allowed to remarry her. What is the status now? Says the Gemara. Ali, but Rav Yossi ben Kippur. Now we have to go back. We had 2 opinions. We had Rav Yossi ben Kippur and we had the Rabbanan. Rav Yossi ben Kippur said it depends whether they did eris and nesuin. The Rabbanan said no, irregardless eris and nesuin. Said the Gemara, let's play it out. Ali, but Rav Yossi ben Kippur, there's no question. Why not give it to Rav Yossi ben Kippur Tama? The Machzer Grushas, Rav Yossi ben Kippur learned that the Torah said Toma, labeling this person. Hu dechsiva sarasa kamaisa. So for the tzara is at the same level, it's Toma, and therefore there is no yibam, there is no chalitza, there is nothing. And if it's because they said ta'ivahi, he ta'ivahin by now ta'ivin, it's nothing to do with the tzara, it has to do with the children. Therefore there's no question according to Rav Yossi ben Kippur. Ha-tzarasa ta'iva. The tzara is a ta'iva, and therefore according to Rav Yossi ben Kippur, for sure the tzara, there is no yibum, there is no chalitza, there is toma, it's like an erva, it's all finished. But what's the shaylaki to ba'ilach aliv the rabbanon? Afal gav them rabbanon toma kisaita udechsiv. Even though the rabbanon says that toma's by saita, ein mekah yitzidei pshuta, but still, the pasuk is talking over here by machzer gushasai. When the Torah wrote the word toma, it was in the case of someone remarrying his divorcee. So it's true, you're right, in the fact that we're darshaning according to the Rabbanan that it's by Saita, but the simple reading of the pasuk was by Machash Gushasai. So maybe it should be called Toma, maybe it should be like an Erva, maybe there should be no Yibam or Chalitza in the case of Machash Gushasai if he subsequently dies. Once we uprooted the pasuk, it's uprooted, and it's as if the Torah only wrote Toma by where? By Saita, not by Machash Gushasai. Therefore, in the case of Machash Gushasai, if he then dies, there will yes be Yibam or Chalitza. Lashon number one. Lashon number two, and we'll conclude with this. No, that say there's no question according to the Rabbanan. Give this akir. It's no tama. It's finished. It's only by a saita. The case of machzor gushasai, there will yes be even more chalitza. What do we say? Even though it says tama machzor gushasai miyat rachmana, but still the Torah excluded hi to'eva vein tzarasa teva. So maybe it doesn't apply to the tzara. So the tzara will yes have even more chalitza. And therefore there'll be no even more chalitza. So says the Gemara, according to two different l'shainis, either it's a shayla on Vesi ben Kibar or it's a shayla on the Rabbanan. What is the story about a machzor gushasa? Someone divorces a woman, she goes marry someone else. That guy remarries her, be'isr, that guy dies. Is there a case of yibur chalitza for that man? Other co-wives of the tzara? And let's go for one answer. Amar lei, Rav Sheshes responds, Tinitua, we have a Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, if there's one widow that's kosher, one that's pasul, if you want to do chalitza to the psula. Says the Gemara, what's the case that you have two potential women over here, one's kosher, one's pasul to yibur chalitza? What's the case? If you're telling me that it means to the whole world at large, why do I care if this woman is allowed to marry a kohen or not? We're not talking about a kohen. We're talking about this guy himself. This guy is kosher, so do yibam, do chalitza. What are we caring about the whole world? Elalav kshira lei, psula lei has to do with he himself. Okay, what is a case in which there'll be a subjective isser or heter? Machzor gushasai. That's the case that you divorce this woman, so you have an isser to remarry her, vikatani, and yet what did the Mishnah say? If you want to do yibam, it has to be done to the kshira. So what do we see clearly? We see clearly that there is going to be a case of yibam. We see that the tzara in a case of machzor gushasai will yes have a potential yibam, and we'll conclude with the Gemara saying no raya. And you ask, what's the difference? Mishum de Rav Yosef of Porn Yesod, Rav Yosef Kanchana Rabbi Lo Yishvach Adam Meibayrai Vacherim Srich on the Hem. Don't spill out your water if someone else needs water. What does that have to do with us? In this case, it's true that you can marry whichever one you want. But if this one of these women is mutter to kohen and one is asur to kohen, so don't go and marry the one that's mutter to kohen. That's not nice, because that one could go marry a kohen. So you should go, if you're going to do chalitza, do it to the one that's asur to the kohen, still allowing the other woman to do chalitza to the kohen. But what we see is that we do not necessarily have a raya what is going to be the din of machzor gushasai, then dies, whether it'll be yimar chalitza. We'll pick it up for the Tashema, and we'll try to bring another raya on the next year. B'siyata d'ishmaya.